Gentlemen, today's topic is women. And the phenotype we will be examining today is the feminist. This type of woman gets very agitated by men, specifically when men go out of their way to annoy women by doing something we call playing video games. Because as we know, there's absolutely nothing more misogynistic than playing a video game with a woman in it. Specifically when you decide to play as a woman who is attractive and not one who's ugly or, Lord forbid, morbidly obese. But on a serious note, why is this? Why is it that whenever a new game releases and it has an attractive woman, it angers feminists to no end? According to these feminists, the reason why they're very angry is because these video games, they objectify women. What these games are doing to women is degrading. They say it's sexist, they say it's misogynistic. That's why they're doing these things, because these video games are harmful to women, which is very ironic because we only have these things today because of feminists. Feminists have always been in favor of women's sexual liberation, and why many of them today are stars. And I cannot think of any line of work more degrading to a woman as a whole, where you're not valued as a person, you're only valued for your body, which would be and prostitution. Yet it is because of feminism that these lines of work continue to be allowed in our society. It is feminists who are pushing for prostitution to be legalized. It is feminists who are filming material. So it makes no sense. We know that these claims are bullshit. We don't even have to look at the most famous books in the world made for women, like 50 Shades of Grey, which was written by E.L. James, who is also a feminist. Again, the people who degrade themselves tend to be feminists. But to be fair to feminists, there are some really vile shows out there that exist. One like Redo Healer, where to summarize it up, the main character is treated horribly by women. He's put down by them, he's shamed by them, he's attacked by them. They do horrible things to him. But then he gets superpowers, and obviously, like the hero he is, he decides to get revenge on these women by going on a massive spree. Like, holy shit, that's such a horrible show. Like, what the fuck? And according to the author of the story, he says it's more popular among women than it is men. Yikes, that really doesn't help feminists out on this one. But I can already hear the feminists typing, no, it's not actually what we fantasize about. No, we would never want it to happen to us, ever, in an unsafe environment. Because that's their number one fantasy. That's what they say, literally, according to themselves. That's not me saying it. I'm literally the messenger of women. I'm representing what women want according to women. If you get angry at me, get angry at the women. That's insane. Like when guys say that they're confused about what women want, this is what we're talking about. I know it's a fantasy and it doesn't mean it's a real thing, or they would be happy if it actually happened. Of course, don't misrepresent me out there, you snakes. I'm not saying it's actually something they want for real, but it's their number one fantasy. Though some scholars might argue that the only reason why women enjoy and fantasize about these things is it because it reminds them of their relationship with their fathers. My sources come from I made it the fuck up. But I digress, that's not the topic of this video. The point I brought all of that up is because it shows it has nothing to do with the quote-unquote male gaze or objectifying women. No, it has nothing to do with those things, but it simply has to do with one thing: their outlook of the world. This outlook of the world causes them to hate beauty, specifically when men value beauty, when they care about beauty and they find it attractive. They hate that because these feminists have a particular way of viewing history. They call it feminist standpoint theory. Now, feminist standpoint theory as a whole is incredibly fucked up. It makes no sense. We can go more into depth about it in the future and its flaws, but that's for another time. And they believe that women in the past had absolutely no power in society, that women were simply objects of beauty and pleasure. Their only purpose was childbirth in those patriarchal societies. From their perspective, if you were a woman in the past, you had absolutely no power, and you were entirely dependent on men. You couldn't choose what type of man you would be with, and you had absolutely no control over your own life. It was all tied to men. Men decided who you married, and men decided how successful you would be. At least those men you were forced to marry. But one of those key traits that would decide how successful you would be, your status in society, is your beauty. Because that is something women were valued for, how beautiful they were. There are stories throughout all of history where men have literally gone to war over women. Helen of Troy, for example. Or kings have gone out of their way to marry a woman for nothing but their beauty, as King David lusted after a woman taking a bath. Your beauty in itself was very valuable, and it could decide your place in society, what type of man you would marry, what type of men would come after you. That is something women could leverage. But there's a caveat. You see, in the past, you would encounter this problem that they've had for thousands of years. It's called being born ugly. Some might even argue it still exists today. My sources are go outside, look around. Oh, there's an ugly person. Point proven. Now that leverage you had in society, the one thing you could leverage as a woman is gone. You don't have it. It doesn't exist. And as a result, feminism as an ideology became very attractive to ugly women. Now, do not misrepresent me on what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that feminists are just ugly. Obviously not. But feminism as an ideology became very attractive to ugly women. Logically, it would be. I mean, if you were born in the past and your beauty greatly influenced your status in society, how men saw you and valued you. Obviously, an ideology that says you're no longer going to be tied to men. You're going to be free. You can decide your own fate. You can work for yourself, pursue your own career, start your own business. You're not going to be dependent on a man anymore. That will be attractive to you, especially if, well, you aren't attracting the best men out there. Of all the things I'm saying right now about feminists, this is not an attack. This is just what it is. Because again, women would be dependent on beauty, and that separated many women from each other. You had women who attracted powerful men purely because of beauty, something that they couldn't control. They had no power over. And this beauty would be a great source of inequality in society, just among women. You're married to a poor man who's a loser and has nothing, well, you're lower status. But if you're a beautiful, attractive woman, you could be homeless on the side of the street, but a king could stumble by and see you and say, hey, I'll take you as my wife. And all of a sudden, you're married to the most powerful man in the world. Of course, that changes your status, making beauty a great source of inequality because men valued it, because men cared about it. That's especially why feminists will get very angry at men who value and care about beauty, who explicitly say, look, I love a great personality. I'd love somebody who would compliment my life. But I want her to be beautiful. I don't want her to be fat. That's why it gets so under their skins, making beauty a source of oppression if you think about it. Beauty existing and being valued causes this inequality that is unjust in its nature. You cannot control or decide how beautiful you are. Beauty is not an earned virtue. It simply separates you from each other. It gives some people a great life, and it gives other people a horrible life. And feminists, ideologically speaking, are all about women pursuing their own careers and having control over their own lives. And as long as men care about this superficial trait, as they call it, it will continue to be a source of oppression and inequality, which is why feminists at their core, whether they admit it or not, hate beauty, and especially men valuing beauty, men caring about beauty. It's a remnant of that old past of patriarchal rule. This is how they see the world. But nobody wants to admit that they hate beauty, and one of the reasons why they're attracted to feminism as an ideology is because they're less attractive. No, we're just gonna call you sexist, misogynistic, hateful, that you're objectifying women, because that's easier and it looks a lot better. Which is why feminists hate beauty. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I cleared some things up for you. Even if you already knew this deep down inside that it's true, hey, it's obvious. I hope at least that I articulated it for you. I made it possibly more clear for you to understand it. And I think all of this is very interesting, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, be sure to check out some of my other videos. And as always, I hope you have a good one.